Hello everybody, this is day 12, so confused. I remembered yesterday that there was a little Daisy's Guide to Beat Bean in the back, if I forget what any words mean. Just had to refresh myself on what bun break was. It's their break time, obviously, where they get biscuits and buns, which is why it's called bun break. But I'll make sure I go there if I see any words I don't understand. So we got to chapter 7, and Daisy and Hazel, they'd just been looking at Miss Tennyson's shoes and measuring them, and now they're going back to Sam. We did not go to Sam. Why did you do that? I whispered to Daisy once we were safely out in the corridor. What if she is the murderer and she realises that we're onto her? How on earth would me writhing about on the floor with a piece of string make Miss Tennyson realise that we're onto her? Daisy whispered back scornfully. Don't be silly, Hazel. You were always worrying. I don't think that was fair at all. I was perfectly right to worry. We were on the trail of a killer. How could Daisy be sure we herself? Anyway, she went on. Miss Tennyson's given us the most perfect opportunity. This is our chance to do some detecting without her around. What sort of detecting? I asked. It sounded as though Daisy had dreamt up another one of her ideas, and after the epicac, I was beginning to be suspicious of those. The epicac was what made them sick. They took it so that they were sick. Can't talk here, said Daisy. Come on, cloakroom. Once we got there, though, Daisy did not seem very eager to tell me the details of her new plan. She lay down on one of the benches and pulled the coats down around her until she was buried under them, with only her feet waving about inside. I sat down next to her. You all right? I asked. Hazel, said Daisy, from under the coats. I know I shouldn't, but I can't help feeling a bit overwhelmed. After all, we are about to catch a murderer. That's quite serious, isn't it? I kept silent. I was already too worried to feel overwhelmed as well. After a moment, the coats rose up in a mountain, and Daisy's head burst through them to stare at me accusingly. You still don't believe that it's Miss Tennyson, do you? She asked. No, I said, despite the evidence of the shoe. I simply could not imagine Miss Tennyson actually pushing Miss Bell over the gym balcony, no matter how much she might want the deputy head job. There were so many other possible solutions. What about the one in Miss Parker's row? What about Miss Hopkins sneaking back down to school? And what about Miss Parker? She lied about her alibi, and she's been acting ragey all week. What if she lied because she argued with Miss Bell and then killed her? Miss Tennyson fits the facts, but so do 3 other people. We can't be sure. Daisy sighed. I didn't think you'd be so jealous about this, she said, just because I worked it out before you did, and I'm the president, and you're only the secretary. Honestly, Hazel. No, I cried. This is important, Daisy. We can't make a mistake. Look, Hazel, she said, standing up. I'll give you more proof, if you like. When Miss Tennyson moved Miss Bell's body out of Deep Dean on Tuesday evening, she must have used that ugly little rattletrap motor car of hers. I bet you there's still evidence in it. That's why I want to investigate while we know that Tennyson's stuck in prep. Oh, come on, why won't you get up? I was still sitting there because I was suddenly stingingly furious at Daisy. I know I've said that there is no point being angry at her, but there is not. But I resented what she had said about her being the president and me being only the secretary. After all, there is no reason why Daisy should be a better detective than me. We were looking at the same clues, weren't we? Daisy liked rushing headlong into things and triumphing, and I liked waiting and thinking. But why should that make her right and me wrong? But Daisy was staring at me appealingly, her big blue eyes wide, so I clenched my teeth, stood up with a jerk, and went to inspect Miss Tennyson's blasted automobile. It was parked beside the north entrance gate, a little blue car all scratched and peeling and paint, and quite covered in dirt. She really does look at it disgustingly, Daisy commented. Just look at that crankcase. I know they're dreadful on those old 7s, but still. Daisy, I said. How? My uncle, said Daisy briefly, as though that explained it. She went up to the car and peered inside. I climbed up on the running board to stand beside her. If anyone else asks, us, said Daisy, without looking at me. We're looking for our exercise books. Miss Tennyson thought she might have left them here, so she sent us down to see. I stared into Miss Tennyson's car. It was very like Miss Tennyson, I thought, odd and shabby and rather tragic. I wonder if my car says the same about me, as you think about me. As I said, I don't know much about cars, and even less about the inside of Daisy's mind. Daisy had pulled a hairpin out of her plait and was fiddling with the door handle. Suddenly she said, Aha! Thumped the handle and pulled the door open. I wonder how on earth we would explain ourselves if one of the mistresses noticed what we were up to. But Daisy was already burrowing inside. She wriggled almost her entire body into Miss Tennyson's car, and her legs, poking out from the bottom of her pinafore, were waving around in the air as she searched. Hazel, do come here, she hissed in excitement. I was reluctant. The car seemed very full of Daisy, but when I finally stuck my head in after her, she rolled over and gestured triumphantly at something on the back seat. It was a stain on the leather as large as my face. It looked as though someone had tried to clean it. The leather was all scratched up and whitish around it, but the stain had soaked in. That, said Daisy to me smugly, is blood. It might be anything, I protested, though I knew that she was right. It looked dark and rusty, exactly like the stains I had found on the gym slip. It might be from anything. Perhaps she cut her hand 6 months ago. Daisy, we can't be sure. Daisy snorted. Lord, she said, you're difficult. All right then, I'll find more evidence. She withdrew from the depths of the car so quickly that she trod on my foot. She leapt down from the running board and began to scrutinise the wheels and the front bumper. She sidled crabwise around it, peering intently at every little bit of mud, and I watched her sourly, thinking that the mud looked very much like mud to me. It obviously meant something more to Daisy. Halfway round the front left wheel, she gave a shriek of excitement. Look, she cried. Look what's stuck in this spoke. It's a leaf, I said. It's not a leaf, Hazel, said Daisy. Honestly, didn't you ever see the countryside before you came to England? It's lichen, you silly. And I know exactly where it's from. It's that funny orange stuff that only grows around the edge of Oakshott Woods. Only? I asked. It still seemed to me that lichen was lichen. The only place for 50 miles at least, said Daisy. The only place where Miss Tennyson might go. Whenever I go on hunts there, it gets all over my boots. Now, this stuff isn't new. It hasn't been her long, I'd say 2 or 3 days, taking us back to Tuesday night. Oh, Hazel, what luck. Now we know where she's hid on Miss Bell's body. We've got enough to accuse Miss Tennyson now. But what if she drove over there on Tuesday or Wednesday to go for a walk? I protested. Of course she didn't, exclaimed Daisy in exasperation. We know that after school on Tuesday and Wednesday she was helping Miss Griffin. She wouldn't have been able to go out on her own before it got dark. And who goes for a walk after dark unless they're doing something nefarious? Look, the only thing we can possibly do now is accuse her. We really and truly have solved the murder. She was more excited than I had seen her in a long time. I knew that I ought to feel excited too, but I only felt sick to my stomach. To me, the evidence still did not seem conclusive. There were so many other explanations for everything we had found, I said gruffly. Come on, let's go up to the house before we get caught. Oh, Hazel, said Daisy, throwing her arms around me. Evidently she had forgotten all about our argument. Isn't everything wonderful? I wanted to tell her that I did not think things were wonderful at all. Wonder what your thoughts are. Do you think it's Miss Tennyson? I'm not sure. I'm still not convinced. Daisy seems a bit creepy to me. So part 6, Daisy makes her case. Chapter 1, what's it? All the way up to house, Daisy kept going on at me about her new plan to confront Miss Tennyson until I could barely stand it any more. We ought to do it soon, she said. After all, we've got all the evidence we need. It seems quite wrong to let her off for any longer. If only we can get into her boarding house and surprise her that way. Isn't that illegal? I asked. I knew what my father would say if he heard I'd been caught breaking into someone else's property. I suppose so, said Daisy, sighing. Isn't it tiresome being a child? No one lets you do anything. I absolutely longed to be 20. I could befriend Miss Tennyson and lure her into a false sense of security. And then, in private, and when she was least expecting it, I'd spring the shoe print and the blood and the moss on her and force her to confess. Perhaps it's a good thing you're not 20, I said. What if you do accuse her, in private, and she killed you too? Goodness, said Daisy. Perhaps a public confrontation would be better. Yes, excellent work, Hazel. She seized hold of my arm so hard that I had a red mark afterwards. That's the right way to do it. And we can, if we're careful. Today's Saturday, after all. Saturday afternoon, you see, is when all the girls are allowed to escape house into Deep Dean Town for a few hours. There's an order to it, of course. Only prefects are allowed out for the whole afternoon. Matron leads the littlest shrimps in a crocodile for an hour's outing straight after lunch on a nice, reliable Saturday round of Debenham and Freebodies, the stationers and the sweet shop, and then back to house again. The rest of us are allowed out in pairs for 2-hour chunks. As third form, we get to go from 3 till 5. Enough time for the cinema if you're smart about it, or the sweet shop and the bookshop, and then a Lion's Corner house for tea and cakes if you're Daisy and me. I was hoping that Daisy's plan, whatever it was, would still leave time for tea and cakes. I was dreading the confrontation with Miss Tennyson and thought of undertaking it hungry was even worse. At lunchtime, Daisy held a royal audience with her shrimps, as well as Betsy North. She had a trio of identical second formers who are loyal to her. Their names are Marie, Maria and Marion, but we all call them the Marys. They run around in a giddy pack and seem to add up to one complete person. They have a sort of collective pash on Daisy and think, also there's another word, pash, which I think is like they admire her. I looked it up earlier actually, and think everything she does is marvellous. She gets the most gorgeous boxes of chocolates from them and awfully soppy cards, which she pretends to appreciate for the sake of the chocolates. When she told them she wanted their help, they nearly went into a collective faint. You see, Daisy told them, I've got this sort of bet going with Kitty. You know Kitty, of course. The Marys did. Once last year, Kitty had told one of them to scram in the presence of Daisy. The slight had never been forgotten. Daisy knew this perfectly well. Well, Kitty and I were talking about old Tennyson. The Marys drew in a breath, delighted by this disrespect, and the ugly old flat hat she always wears out. I said it'd be an absolute gift to the world if someone took it off her, and if no one volunteers, then I'd need to do the deed myself. Kitty said that I'd never dare, of course, and now I'm going to prove her wrong. The Marys went pink and shook with shock and excitement. Now, said Daisy, you mustn't tell anyone about this. When you go out this afternoon, I want you to find Miss Tennyson and watch her wherever she goes. Reporting to me when you get back to house. And, she said, she added as an afterthought. If you do especially well, I'll let you carry my book bag about on Monday. The Marys almost swooned. You can't have them carrying all carrying your things, I said to her afterwards. Yes, I can, said Daisy, leaning her head on her arm and staring dreamily at the gluey remains on the shepherd's pie. They can each carry a book and someone can take my coat and hat. That's not what I meant, I said crossly, reaching with my fork and scooping up the rest of Daisy's pie. I always feel rather bad for Daisy's shrimps. She does use them so, and all because she happens to be beautiful. It is really unfair, Daisy's beauty. I don't think I've ever seen her with a spot, while all the rest are simply covered in them. I've had one particular one on the side of my nose for weeks and weeks. It sits there and refuses to go away. I look at it in the mirror sometimes and want to weep. Meanwhile, Daisy glows, not too pink, not too pale, flawless as a girl's painting. I try not to believe the Daisy Wells myth, since I know how much of it is simply nonsense, but I also know that it would not take much for me to end up as silly as the Marys. What do you think? How's this going to go? I wonder if the first person they confront is going to be the murderer. We will see. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.